Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to Doctor. Today our group will be discussing on a topic based on meatball. So our group members are Aida Sarah, Nur Shamimi, me myself Izina Shuha, Kiara Anastasia, Nurul Izati, Nurul Amira and also Joyce Jaya. So we will be discussing on introduction, just like a general intro for meatball. Ingredients, like regular recipe for meatballs, the health benefits based on the ingredients, the process flow, the halal control points HCP in meatball processing. So we have 10 HCP in making meatballs, the halal issue on meatballs, and also conclusion.
As we can see, meatballs have become one of the choices that fulfill consumer protein need. For example, like chicken and beef meatball. In general, beef meatballs are high in protein and carbohydrate content, which are important micronutrients required by human body. Every country has different name of meatball, such as in Malaysia we know as bobola, while Indonesia they call bakso, and in Taiwan it's known as kung wan and other more.
Assalamualaikum Doctor. My name is Izzy Nashuha and I will explain about the ingredients and health benefits of meatballs. So in ingredients, meatballs have ground meat, egg, water, breadcrumbs, onion, salt and also pepper. Next, I will explain about the health benefits of every ingredients in the meatballs. So the first one is ground meat. Ground meat is an excellent source of various vitamins and minerals. These include vitamin B12, zinc, selenium, iron, niacin, and also vitamin B6. Second one is egg. Egg is rich sources of selenium, vitamin D, B6, B12, and minerals such as zinc, iron, and copper. Next one is water. Water is a good source of digestion, absorption, circulation, creation of saliva, transportation of nutrients, and maintenance of body temperature. Number fourth is breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs, this food is low in saturated fat and very low in cholesterol. It is also a good source of thiamine and manganese. The fifth one is onion. Onion may benefit health heart, loaded with antioxidant, contain cancer fighter compounds and also help control blood sugar. Number 6 is salt. Salt is essential minerals in salt that act as important electrolytes in our body. They help with fluid balance, nerve transmission, and also muscle function. The final ingredient is pepper. Black pepper contains minerals like potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, sodium, as well as vitamins such as thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and vitamin B6. So it is also its ability to help aid digestion and also weight loss.
Hi and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Doctor. My name is Aida Sarah Samhana binti Muhammad Sifian. Today, I would like to share with you about the process flow of meatball production. Doctor, for our group have 12 process flow, started with the halal animal and lastly end with the storage and transportation. Alright, Doctor, for my part, I will explain start with the halal animals until cutting and the grinding processing and will continue by my friend Joyce. For the process flow, maybe have some or a little bit similarity with the halal process flow. Alright, Doctor, let's start. For our process flow, we would like to control from the beginning. It means from the cow small, we feeding the cow with the halal and quality food product, and control their life and raising the animal with the Islamic Sharia. Alright, Doctor, for the first process flow is the halal animals. It means not mixed animal like the pig plus the cow. As we know, pig is a haram animals, which is cannot mix with the halal animals, which is cow for our meatball production, and they are slaughtered in a halal manner. And besides that, the physical condition of halal animals must be healthy and still alive time slaughtering. Second is the use sharp knife. The knife must be clean and sharp, and the slaughter person must be an adult Muslim might familiar with the process of the slaughter and also being registered trained by the halal certification body. And the next process flow is the invocation. The short is the like basmalah, and the fully is the Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It start with the niyyah intention. It mean niyyah for the halal slaughtering processing, not for the other purpose. And the mandatory to pronounce the name of God while cutting the throat. And the tasmiyah has to be invoked by a Muslim slaughter immediately before the slaughtering processing. And Doctor, I would like to share with you the 4 conditions for the halal slaughtering we must follow for our meatball production. The first one is the animal, second slaughter, third tools, and the last is the process. And next for the slaughter at the neck from the front side is the halal slaughter must begin with an incision on the neck at some point just below the glottis, which is the Adam apples, and the cut of a trachea. In the Arabic verb is the halqum, esophagus, merrick, and both the carotid arteries and the jugular vein wadajin to hasten the bleeding and the death of the animals. And next for the post-laying treatment, bleeding has stopped and the heart of the animal also stopped, and the animal is dead and may start the further act of the processing the carcass. And for the beside that, the next process flow is the cutting and the grinding processing, fine chopping and mixing of the raw meat. It means from the biggest size of the cow, we chop to the smallest size using the using the technology for the next production of the meatball, because from the biggest size of the raw animal we cut to the small. It means for the next production easy for the next step production.
Okay, I'll proceed with the next step, which is cleaning the equipment. And before that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Joyce, and I'm from Bioprocess Technology, 2nd year. Okay, as for the next step, which is cleaning the equipment, this aspect is very important, as the equipment used to cut the meat or anything to do with the meat has to be really clean and sanitized, and before it's done, it has to be inspected by the halal inspector. By doing so, you can assure that the quality is definitely clean to be used, and it can ensure the halalness of the meat that is being operated during that time. Nextly, after that is mixing and molding. Well, in this procedure, it comprises of 3 aspects, which is for the mixing, which comes first as of chemical substances, which includes salt, ascorbic acid, phosphates, and also antioxidants. Next would be plant origins, which comprises of roots and tubers, vegetables and fruits. The third would be non-meat ingredients of the animal origin itself, which contains a protein plasma, gelatin, and transglutaminase. And once the mixing is done, the molding process takes place, which is basically molding it into becoming a ball shaped, because it's a meatball, right? Is to shape into ball, and once it's shaped into the ball, it will go through this particular lanes into where it's supposed to be. Once the molding is settled up, we go for boiling, where all the molded meatballs would be in big a big compartment, and the boiling would be up to 100 degrees Celsius, and it's done for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is more than optimum time enough, because basically by then it is more than enough to ensure that it's well boiled as 400 degrees Celsius. Nextly would be freezing. As for freezing, it can be at vary from the temperature of -40 to -35 degrees Celsius, but if it is at -35 degrees Celsius, it's even better. So during the freezing process, it includes 3 types of system. It can be either the blast freezing system, mechanical freezing system, or cryogenic freezing system. Any of this would be good enough, because all these 3 systems basically applies the temperature within -40 degrees Celsius to -35 degrees Celsius. Nextly would be the packaging and labeling. The proper temperature for packaging during that procedure would be -40 degree Fahrenheit. And the products that are packed should be done accordingly as respective to the halal establishment, with the accurate descriptions. This is actually very important. And to ensure a well done packaging, vacuum packaging can be done. And why it's better to be vacuumed is because it can last up to 14 days, and thus it prevents the onsets of rancidity of the product, the meatball itself. Alright, last but not least is the storage and transportation. This is although it's the last procedure, it's very important, because once you have already ensured your halal assurance for this previous steps, it's a waste if you don't uphold it towards the last part. So upon the storage and transportation, more attention should be paid here as well, because it is really important, as it will be reaching the consumers after this. Well, as for storaging, the storage area should be a part of the approved establishment, and the non-halal conformance products that is present there should be stored in designated chiller and clearly labeled, so you can differentiate between the products, the current products, which is like the meatball, or the other one which is not supposed to be there. So during this procedure, it should be made available upon the inspection by the auditors. And as for the transportation, under no any circumstances can the halal product, which is now in our scenario is the meatballs, should never be transported with the term nuts that comes under the category of nuts mukhalaza, which comprises pigs or dogs or their products related. And the establishment shall actually identify and segregate non-halal products in complete packaging from the halal product during the transportation. By this, we can prevent any sort of impurities from the surrounding of the meatball that has been fully packed. So by doing so, you can ensure that the halalness of the product is actually ensured.
Alright, doctor. After the explanation from Joyce about the another seeds process flow, we would like to share with you the several picture about process flow. First, the first picture show during the slaughtering processing face the Kaaba. Face the Kaaba while neck cutting. And the second picture show a cow and the position of the Adam's apple. And the next is the cutting and the grinding processing. And the lastly is at the bottom has the resources for our slide, doctor.
Alright, on this slide you can see the gist of how the meatball is actually produced. Okay, we can call it as the meatball production plan. It's a gist of how it looks like from the cutting process, molding, mixing, freezing, boiling, everything takes place here. So as you can see on the right side of the picture, in the middle we can see that is where the molding is done. It's shaped into a ball right after the mixing is done. And on the top we can see that is the compartment I have mentioned that it will go through for boiling. Same goes to the picture on the left, which is boiling and stuff that is happening there. And yeah, basically this is how it would look when the meatball is produced. The place where the meatball is produced, it's basically as how it looks here.
Halal control point in meatball processing. There are several steps of halal control point. The first step is halal animal. The animal must be of an acceptable species. The breeding of animal should be halal as well. Halal and haram meat should be separated at all stages of halal meat chain. This means that halal and haram sources should be not contact to each other, so that no cross-contamination occur. The second step of HCP is use the sharp knife. The knife must be so sharp that the animal does not feel the pain of the cut, especially when no sternum is used. Another reason of use the sharp knife is to minimize the bleeding. The size of the knife must be proportionate to the size of the neck, and the knife should not be sharpened in front of animal for animal welfare reason.
The third halal control point is invocation. The name of Allah must be invoked while cutting or slaughtering. The usual formula is Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Allahu Akbar, which means in the name of Allah, Allah is the greatest. The blessing must be pronounced when passing the knife on the neck of the animal, and in the case of mechanical Islamic slaughter, saying a blessing at the beginning of the process or by using recordings of blessing is allowed. The fourth HCP is slaughter method. The animal should be slaughtered by cutting the front part of the neck, severing the carotides, jugulars, trachea, and esophagus without reaching the bone in the neck. And in Islam, it is preferable to turn the animal towards Mecca before slaughtering, but it is only a secondary requirement. The fifth HCP is postlaying treatment. In order to make sure that we produce halal meat, it is abominable or detestable to sever any parts of the animal before it is completely lifeless. Once the bleeding has ceased, the heart stops and the animal is completely dead. One may start further acts of processing the carcass. Then, the skin and internals may be removed before deboning the animal in a manner that protects the safety of meat. The sixth HCP is clean equipment. Any equipment used for halal processing must be clean as inspected by the halal inspector, as well as quality assurance and the Department of Agriculture. The equipment must be rinsed thoroughly with clean water by a Muslim inspector to make the product acceptable for halal production.
Next, I will continue with HCP7, which is mixing. One must ensure that prohibited material does not gain entry into halal products. Some of the ingredients to be avoided include, but are not limited to, gelatin, lard, pork extract, natural bacon flavor, other ingredients derived from animals, and ingredients containing more than 0.5% alcohol. The meat also must be clean and not contaminated with non-halal ingredients. Next, boiling, HCP8. We must boil the meatballs to kill the microorganisms. For HCP8, which is boiling, we must pre-cook the meatballs by boiling before freezing to kill the microorganisms. Usually, we boil at 100 degrees Celsius within 5 to 10 minutes. HCP9, packaging and labeling.
The final step in the manufacture of processed meatball is packing the product in the right containers and must label them to accurately identify them with halal markings. Because of the processing of meatball and varies a great deal from one company to the other, the industry is advised to consult its halal certification authority for clarification of any issues. Lastly, for HCP10 storage and transportation, halal products should be segregated from non-halal products because it can lead to cross-contamination if we do not segregate them. It is important to separate non-halal products and halal products to conserve the purity of the halal products itself.
Hello, my name is Kiara, and for my part, I'm going to explain about the halal issues on producing a meatball. And on my part, I'm going to focus more on the additives that are added inside the meatball that are sometimes not halal, but we won't necessarily know because they need to use some techniques that to detect the non-halal product. And sometimes it's not the product that is not halal, but it's the way we produce that food additives that makes it non-halal, and I'm going to present more about that. The first additives that I'm going to explain about is the protein additives. And probably like some are wondering, like, because meatball already contain meats, which actually contains proteins, but then why are more proteins added? So the reason is, as we know, when we create a meatball or when we produce meatball, gelatin must be added because gelatin gives that chewy structure, those meatball structure that when you eat it's chewy. But then the addition of gelatin may cause the weakening of myofibril protein gelatins inside the meatball products, which in the end it will lead to a less elastic texture of the meatball itself. Hence why more protein is added to keep those elastic texture of a meat itself. And then some of the proteins that are added are plasma protein, whey protein, egg whites protein, and also soy protein isolates. So egg whites and soy proteins are considered as halal protein additives, but not necessarily plasma and also whey protein. Regarding whey protein, they may be halal and they may also not be halal. It all depends on the enzyme used in the cheese production to use this whey protein. So basically, if the rennet that is used to produce the whey protein comes from a slaughtered calf according to Sharia halal, then it will be halal. But if it's not, then it is non-halal. So as we all know, sometimes it's not necessarily the product itself, but the way the product is produced. Last type of protein additive is the plasma protein. So in contrast to like egg whites and soy protein that is halal and whey protein that may or may not be halal, plasma protein is purely non-halal for Muslim consumers because plasma protein is derived from blood and it is prohibited under the Muslim law. The next additives that may be an issue in making halal meatball is transglutaminase, or for short we will mention it as TGase. So TGase is a food additive and it is recognized in meatball as a meat glue, and it is an enzyme that can catalyze the formation of a covalent bond between a free amine groups. However, TGase is not only added inside a meatball or meat product. It can also be added to dairy products to increase the viscosity and strength of yogurt, to give a smooth surface and improve the creaminess of a low-fat yogurt. It can also be found in a bakery product. It can improve the flavor of the product, and it also enhance the stickiness, the flexibility, and it can also be used for like noodles, dumpling skin. But then currently, why transglutaminase is a problem when it is added inside a meatball, it's because of its diverse application in a lot of products besides meatball. It exposed the Muslim society to haram TGase. So as our other additives, there is an halal transglutaminase or TGs, but then it is easier to produce the haram TGs. Why? Because there a large number of transglutaminase is isolated from a mammalian organ such as blood, liver, and placenta of bovine and pig. And although that TGs can be isolated from halal animals such as bovine, Muslim consumers are still threatened with this additive due to the non-halal slaughtering process of the bovine, or the possibility that it is taken from the blood plasma of the bovine, which we all know that blood is haram for Muslim. But the conclusion is that TGs, yes, there is halal source for TGs, which is the microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi. But then again, it's not that common to use it. It's still more common to derive it from animals. But then in a large scale, it's hard to make sure that halal procedure are being used, which is why TGs is considered as one of the food additives that may create problems in issuing a halal meatball. And lastly is the gelatin additives. And as we all know, gelatin is they have a very wide variety of function. They can act as a gelling and foaming agent, a thickener, a plasticizer, emulsifier, foaming agent, moisture retention, and it improves texture and the binding agent. And due to these characters, besides using gelatin on meatballs, it's also used in dairy, bakery, jelly, gummy, chocolate, marshmallow, almost every brand of food. But then the problem is in creating the halal gelatin. And as we all know, currently some gelatin, they can be made out of pork. But then there are also halal gelatin, such as the one that come from porcine and bovine sources. Then there is also alternative gelatin that we can find from gum arabic, seaweeds, and also fish gelatin. But then again, the production of halal gelatin is in the whole world is less than 100%, which make it a challenge to find an actual halal gelatin. Because let's say we use the gelatin from bovine and porcine, the way the gelatin is produced, again, the way they cut the bovine and porcine, it still need to be monitored to know that the halal gelatin is actually produced. Seeing that many gelatin additives that we use in our meatball products can be non-halal, there are actually some DNA detection method that can be used to avoid the misuse of halal certification, meaning that that we can actually make sure that the meatball is halal before giving it the halal certification. One of the most famous techniques are the PCR, which is PCR techniques by amplifying specific genes such as mtDNA. There are also other detection methods such as PCR sortem hybridization analysis and also loop mediated isothermal amplification LAM. So there will be all from my part on halal issue on meatballs, and I'm gonna pass it to my friend. Thank you.
Conclusion. Every step in the production line should be determined whether any recipe according to decision and monitor carefully to prevent any contamination or adulteration. This means every single step in the production of meatball is very important, especially the process flow and the recipe. We need to monitor carefully to prevent any contamination or adulteration that may occur. Adulteration is referred to the mixing of other matter, and as the result of adulteration, food become impure and unfit for human consumption. No matter where the origins and the history of the food, by ensuring that it is halal, we can be sure that food will be safe to consume and clean. This shows the flexibility of the term halal itself. Last but not least, helps in giving people the assurance they need to consume the foods. The food itself needs to be trusted, and in order to do that, a series of checkup need to be done by the authorities.
That's all from us, doctor. Thank you so much and take a good care of yourself.